Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Tuesday, December 29th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. So, by now you've heard, no Music City Bowl. Missouri had to pull out of the game against Iowa on Wednesday because of COVID-19 issues, and it was too late for the game in Nashville to make other arrangements. Beat writer Souichi Terada joins us to talk about the decision and the Tigers. He also provides a quick look at a big basketball game on Wednesday night when Tennessee visits Mizzou Arena. After a break, you'll hear from Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz and maybe a word or two from athletic director Jim Sturck from the news conference announcing no bowl game for the Tigers. So let's get started talking to Souichi Terada. Okay, Souichi, I was getting my week planned on Sunday and really looking forward to Wednesday, right? You had the Music City Bowl at 2:30. You had Missouri, Tennessee at 8 o'clock that night. We're still getting basketball, but football is off. That was kind of a kick in the gut yesterday to hear that Missouri and Iowa will not play in the Music City Bowl this week. Let's take it from the top. You woke up Sunday morning like we all did, thinking the game was on, and by mid-afternoon, nothing of the sort was happening. So tell us what happened to the Music City Bowl.
Yeah, obviously, Blair, unfortunately, the Music City Bowl altogether has been canceled. Essentially, what first happened was Mizzou had to pull out because of rising COVID-19 numbers, and considering the game was only 3 days away, they weren't able to find Iowa a replacement like they were able to do for the Liberty Bowl, where Tennessee, another SEC team, dropped out. Then a very talented, very good 92 Army team had to kind of slot in and take the bowl spot. So unfortunately, none of that for Iowa and the Music City Bowl, so it's just canceled. Blair, I was in the same boat as you in that I was kind of getting my story ideas ready. I was kind of leaning heavily into the Iowa prep in terms of who they have and what made them so successful. And I had all this knowledge, Blair, that's just kind of going to waste, unfortunately. So I can kind of sympathize with the players and coaches who did do all that game prep planning. And obviously, Blair, this was due to COVID-19. What I thought was interesting was that Mizzou all season has struggled. Well, I don't want to say they've struggled with COVID-19. I think that's just they've struggled with roster numbers, which I think is an important distinction to make in the sense that they've played under the SEC's 53 player threshold, which you're allowed to do. They've played with 51, 52 players for every now and then. And so when you do that, that's because of COVID-19, because of transfers, opt-outs, all of these things. And Mizzou was obviously down for scholarship numbers to begin with. So they've shown that they're willing to kind of play through, the adversity. But it got to the point, Blair, and I thought this was interesting from Drinkwitz, that he was basically like, yeah, local health officials pretty much deemed us a public health risk should Mizzou travel to Nashville. And so it was at that level of the outbreak. If this was a summer, Drinkwitz pretty much said, yeah, we would have had to pause. So it was just kind of an unfortunate timing, I think, because if this had happened last week, maybe the game would have been salvageable. Who knows? Who knows in 2020? But at the end of the day, that's just kind of how it fell out, which was just an unfortunate thing for Mizzou and Iowa.
Okay, first of all, don't waste that knowledge. Store it away. You never know when it might come in handy someday. A couple of things here. A bowl game is different than a regular season game in that they're difficult to move, pick up and move. Bowl games are scheduled. They're placed on the schedule years in advance. They're there, for reasons and mostly for entertainment reasons. The 2:30 Central Time slot for kickoff on Wednesday, that's where ESPN wanted the game. It wasn't like they could pick up the Music City Bowl and move it a few days. And even if that was possible, you just didn't know what the health concerns were. And look, Iowa went through something similar a week earlier, right? Iowa didn't practice from middle of December until just this past Saturday. So even Iowa had its COVID issues as well. A couple of things here, Souichi, though. The Tigers game at Mississippi State to end the regular season, the game that was played on December 19th, is there some sense that, that's where there were some issues coming out of that game for Mizzou?
Yeah, Blair, that's kind of the important distinction here to make, right? Because I saw a lot of Iowa fans on Twitter of all places. I know not the greatest resource, but I saw a lot of Iowa fans kind of complaining or blaming Drinkwitz and Mizzou players about how essentially Mizzou allowed the players to go home, and everyone was like, "That's why you guys are having an outbreak because you guys went home. Iowa didn't go home," and it was this whole crusade. And I just the facts don't quite back that up. And Drinkwitz was pretty clear about mentioning that in a sense that yes, Blair, like you mentioned, the Mississippi State game is pretty much where it's kind of believed the COVID-19 kind of outbreak or numbers kind of spiked because they went into the game with one positive test and they did the subsequent contact tracing, but they actually tested the Sunday after. So the Sunday after the Mississippi State game, a day after, and that's when they had several positive tests according to Drinkwitz, and then they kind of disbanded. But once they came back, they tested Friday, which was Christmas Day, and then they tested again Saturday, December 26th. And both of those tests kind of revealed that Mizzou was having a COVID-19 outbreak. And of course, Blair, what we know of the coronavirus incubation period is that it usually takes at least 2 to 5 days for a positive test to actually deem positive, because you can't contract COVID and perhaps not know for at least a few days even what testing. So that's kind of the thing. And so it's kind of a weird thing that fans, I guess, are kind of pointing to that, going home for Christmas for the holidays. I really think that was a good move by Drinkwitz, just because you've had these kids, for months and months just prepping for a season that we've never seen, and it just the toll on the mental health. I think, even not just for players, just I think just for everybody in 2020. I think just taking a mental break like that is so beneficial on that. And so, obviously we don't know for certain with this virus. I believe health officials kind of traced it back to that Mississippi State game, but it seems that it was just kind of unfortunate timing from Mizzou, like I said, in the sense that this outbreak really did kind of happen just days away from the bowl game, which, like you said, Blair, can't be moved between stadium deals and ESPN, and you got all these things. Whereas with the SEC, that's the big reason why they did SEC in conference, right? Just because they're in charge of all of those venues and the TV deals and all these things, so they can make switches, 5-6 days before the game. Unfortunately, with essentially an out of conference game, essentially for entertainment value only, like you said, Blair, that's not exactly possible to just move it and push it back a few days.
We're going to hear from Eli Drinkwitz after we take a break, and so he refers a couple of times to the social media comments. I wasn't sure what he was referring to because all of this was unfolding on Sunday as I was covering the Chiefs game, so I wasn't monitoring social media
Mhm.
for the reaction. So when I heard him say that Sunday night, I came home and listened to the Drinkwitz press conference, and he was talking about the fans. So I guess so. It's Iowa. It was Iowa fans that were on him a little bit.
Yeah, essentially, it's obviously I don't want to cast Iowa fans in one big light. I've actually had some positive interactions with Iowa fans because I came from a Big Ten background, so don't want to do that. But there were some murmurs, not even murmurs, there were some shouts, I guess, on social media that were essentially blaming Drinkwitz. And the big thing too is that Drinkwitz essentially said, if there's any blame, blame it on him. Don't blame it on the
Right.
players. And I think that's a good way of going about it, just because at the end of the day, it is his decision, and he's taking ownership of it. I still don't think, Drinkwitz is necessarily the one guy you should be blaming, but that's just kind of the reality of college football, where you have very passionate fans, and I guess that's just kind of the territory that comes with it.
I don't know if there's any blame here. I mean, just we're in a pandemic, and
Yeah.
well, anyway. And the other unfortunate aspect of not playing this game was the incident that happened in Nashville on Christmas Day, the
Hmm.
bombing, and it was the game was seen as a kind of a chance to for Nashville to rally around an event, and so it's not going to happen. But they do have the Titans in playoff contention, and well, they didn't look good last night. We're recording this, by the way, on Monday. Football season is over for Mizzou, ends 5-5, and I'm sure at some point we'd have had some Souichi Terada authored wrap up of Mizzou football this season. And I know you and I have touched on the progress that this program has made, but how about bottom line it for us, Souichi, and tell us what you thought of Eli Drinkwitz's first year.
Yeah, exceeded expectations, but I think it comes with the caveat that 5-5 looks great, and I don't think anybody, any Mizzou fan or Drinkwitz or any player is going to be just mad or disappointed about that. Blair, I'll do a little teaser. I actually looked back at my preseason predictions. I did my game by game predictions, and I had Mizzou at 4-6, and I only missed one game, which was the LSU one. So I was very
Wow,
that was pretty good of me.
that's great. And that's fantastic.
I was 9-1.
That's something, of course, I should have brought up and not you, but we'll let that slide.
Well, I was curious just because I just wanted to see how I did because Drinkwitz was pretty adamant about preseason predictions to other
Yeah,
reporters. So I'll probably write a story being like, "Hey, look, I was relatively pretty right."
you should.
You know what? I kind of asked this to Drinkwitz yesterday. You know, where does he go from here? At what point does he kind of decompress? He said that it'll take him at least a few days, and he kind of brought this up unprompted, which I think is kind of shows the psyche of where he's at in the sense that yes, it was a very successful season. Yes, they laid down a great foundation. Yes, they did it. You know, amid COVID and amid roster limitations and under the 53 player threshold and all that. But there was a clear gap between Mizzou and the top of the SEC East and Florida and Georgia. And I don't think that's necessarily like a shame or like Mizzou fans should be mad about that or anything. I think that's just a reality of where the SEC East is at. But I think Drinkwitz has kind of pinpointed that as the one area that Mizzou really needs to get better at is competing with Georgia and Florida. Because Blair, if you remember, the Florida game was weird because of the brawl, but Mizzou was pretty competitive through about a quarter and a half. Going into halftime, it was still a competitive game, and Georgia obviously they rallied back from being down 14-0, and then they were only down 7, but then the second half just completely unraveled. And I think that kind of shows you a depth issue, a kind of a talent gap, and I think that's the number one area where Jerkowitz is going to be looking at all off season. And then he admitted that's what keeps him up at night. So it was kind of interesting for him to say that, but otherwise, he said he's going to be back on the recruiting trail, and that's where he's going to go from here. So that's kind of where Mizzou football is at. And I think fans should be, like I said, should be very very happy with such a successful first season.
Yeah, listen, I think it's close. It's easier to get to the top two from number three than it is from number 6 or 7, right?
Hmm.
And to be to have beaten Kentucky, South Carolina, Vandy, and of course with South Carolina and Vandy going to start over with new coaches next year. Tennessee is an interesting barometer for Missouri, and that's one program that I think Missouri fans would love to be able to challenge on an annual basis, and maybe let that be the battle for for the top contender to the top, the Georgia Florida top. So
Hmm.
um, okay, so we can't let you go without talking about the basketball game. The SEC marquee game right now.
Yeah.
Tennessee coming into Mizzou Arena, and the only two ranked teams from the conference are doing battle. It's the SEC opener, and um, look, if you base it on Missouri's last outing, you would not feel great about the Tigers' chances. They survived the scare by Bradley, but Mizzou has shown us enough earlier in its first 5 games to suggest that they'll be very competitive in this game. And I don't think the Tigers are as talented as Tennessee, but at least Mizzou's got something, right? We've seen it in their victories over the likes of Oregon, Wichita State, and in Illinois, of course. And then the way they beat Bradley at the end after that seemingly lost game. So maybe this Tigers team just has a little something about it that can carry them through. I do think if they're able to win on Wednesday, it would be their most impressive victory of the season.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Blair, yeah, I guess with Illinois kind of picking up a few more
Yeah,
losses.
where it's like where Illinois is right now. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's really cool, Blair. I think when the SEC schedule first released, everyone kind of circled this game in the sense that one is the SEC opener, but it's a good barometer, and now it's much higher stake. Like you mentioned, where we're recording this on Monday before the newest AP poll has arrived, so perhaps another SEC team sneaks in.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are the top two ranked teams, and Mizzou essentially took kind of Kentucky's spot. And I really think, Blair, when you look at that Bradley game, and it was funny because Jeremiah Tillman kind of admitted it, like he was a little scared when Mizzou was down 8 with I believe like 3 minutes, a little over 3 minutes and 30 seconds left, and just the way the shots were falling, the way they've struggled, and the way Bradley had all the momentum, I really thought they were done. My gamer top, I kind of had I essentially kind of scrapped my top, and I'm like, okay, well, Bradley won. So obviously, I had to scrap all of that again and write another gamer because that's just how this industry or this job goes sometimes. But I really think there's been so many times this season where I think Mizzou, had it been the same team from last year or 2 years ago, they would have just folded, where the inexperience or kind of the underclassmen or just the mistakes kind of just piled up, and you saw a kind of an incomplete Mizzou team falter. But you really didn't see that, and we've seen that so many times this season. Whether it was the Oregon game, even Wichita State on the road was a good win, just doing it so soundly. And obviously the Illinois game, now you have Bradley, and even the Liberty game, I think, Blair, and we've talked about it on this podcast, like Conzo Martin as scheduled this non-conference is probably as tough as you can, besides just going all out top 10 teams like some programs do. And I think it was a kind of the sneaky games like Oral Roberts and Liberty and Bradley to kind of show what Mizzou is made of. So that leaves us at 6-0, a 6-0 Mizzou team that's very fun to watch when it gets it going, and then we'll see how good they are when they play Tennessee, who they do play twice this season, which is kind of a fun little wrinkle just because of the way the SEC schedule is.
I haven't seen a college basketball strength of schedule list. We know that Kentucky's played a ridiculously difficult schedule, and they're paying for it in their record. But look, they've got a freshman, as they often do, right? A freshman powered team. Missouri was prepared for this schedule and prepared even for a crazy pandemic affected season, just because of players getting healthy and having a lot of experience. When you kind of as you try to build the case for Missouri season, it's there, right? It's with the experienced players, healthy bodies, and they were up to the challenge of this schedule, and it's paid off for them. It really has, and kudos to Conzo Martin and his staff for getting this team into this kind of shape. So looking forward to Missouri, Tennessee on Wednesday night, and Souichi, looking forward to talking to you again soon. We'll do it again next week. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will hear from Eli Drinkwitz. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Jim said. First and foremost, want to say that we're disappointed. Was very excited about heading to Nashville and being a part of the Music City Bowl. Know that that's a tremendous bowl game, and really wanted to be a part of Nashville's healing and moving forward after the incident that occurred on Christmas morning. Disappointed and apologize to Iowa for not being able to get our guys to the finish line. We did everything within our power to try to move forward, but ultimately, with dealing with this virus, you have to put the health and safety and the well-being of not only your student athletes, but the community, our staff, at the forefront. And had this, just been any other time in the summer, we would have needed to pause. And so when that became apparent of what we needed to do, then that's what we did. I hate it for our team. Our team worked extremely hard to get to this bowl game. We're very excited about. We were very excited about the opportunity to compete, but we won't get that opportunity now. I do want to say this. This is, if there's anybody to blame for this, it would fall on my shoulders as the head coach and the leader of this organization. It is by no means our players' fault or our organization's healthcare or protocols. We have followed those stringently since they've become an inception, and we have done everything possible. But if there was an easy way out of this predicament with this virus, I think the country would have already handled that. And so for us to be belittled or beleaguered on social media, or players to be challenge because they went home for Christmas is unfair. And if they want to direct that at anybody, ultimately, as the head coach, you can place that blame on my shoulders. But our players didn't do anything wrong. It's just unfortunate that we're going through a global pandemic. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Bill Pollock with Missouri Net. Eli, you said you blame yourself. You talked earlier in the summer that, you could do everything possible and still get COVID. So can you clarify why you say blame you for this?
This is a world that likes to assign blame to everything. So if there's somebody to blame, ultimately it would be me as the leader of the organization. I don't feel like there's any personal thing that I could have done differently. We're experienced a high number of positive cases in the last 7 days that have affected support staff, and players. We have followed CDC guidelines to extremes. We've tested as in the SEC protocol. We've rapid antigen tested on top of what was standard protocol. We've done everything we could to try to prevent an outbreak, but we came up short on this one, and ultimately that rests with me.
Hey, Colin O'Brien, Jeff City News Tribune. Coach, there's been speculation that this is because players went home from Christmas, and I've also seen reports that this was a result of the Mississippi State game. Can you offer any clarification onto the provenance of maybe this outbreak or where it's coming from?
Yeah, I'm not a scientist or an epidemiologist, and I didn't stay in a Holiday Inn last night. But what I do know is, we experienced when we returned back from Mississippi State. We had a positive case prior to going to Mississippi State. We subsequently contact traced. When we returned on Sunday, we tested, and we had several positives from that time. We allowed our team to travel home for the holidays after an extremely long season, which we started July 26th and played a game all the way up until December 19th. And felt like it was in the best interest of our players' mental health to travel home, which we had done on the bye week. So it didn't feel like it was an extreme risk. Didn't feel like it was a risk. But then when we came back, we had several positives in the first test. And then we had several more positives in the next test. And at that point, it became a local county health officials and team doctors decision that we needed to pause for 7 days to try to prevent the spread and prevent any more outbreak. And for us to try to travel this team to Nashville would put the public health at risk. And so that's really where the decision-making lied. I appreciate the fact that there's a chain of command and there's a separation. Our staff and players wanted to forge on. We were committed to trying to do everything possible. This has nothing to do with total numbers, scholarship numbers, anything like that. This is a local county health and doctors' decision that we pinned it. We posed a public health risk if we were to continue to practice and move forward. So that's what it was. As far as whether or not it was because we let our guys go home for Christmas, if you follow the science of COVID-19, I believe it says that it's going to be 2 to 5 days from exposure. So unless they were exposed on their first day home to the virus or they encountered a very large viral load, I'm not sure that you can equate where you got the virus from. And I'll also just, again, I know there's a lot of social media warriors out there that have all the answers. But, if we knew all the answers about COVID, I would think that we probably would have enacted those in the United States of America and wouldn't continue to have an outbreak that's, the largest it's ever been. But what do I know? I'm a football coach.
Ben Arnett, KOMU TV here in Columbia. Coach, I'm sure you've had seasons end many different ways, but this is unprecedented. Kind of a message do you give to your team to try to maybe soften the blow or anything like that?
Yeah, there's no softening the blow when you end a season the way we had to end it. But you just up front with them and tell them. And, like I said, this is the 8th out of the 10 games or 8 out of 11 games that have changed time, dates, location, variation of game besides the entire schedule. I think it's just a pretty much ending of 2020 season. I did tell this team how extremely proud of them I am, how they have fought and been resilient in the face of every challenge that we've thrown at them, how they've done what we've asked them to do repeatedly, how proud I believe this state and our university is of the fight that they showed. We were picked 13th. We finished 6th in the league. All right. We were picked to win 2 games. You could have made a couple $1,000s had you bet on, the over on our over under, So I'm extremely proud of our football team. And when you look around that room today, there's a lot of empty seats, and those guys kept fighting and showed up and every day went out there and played their butt off. And so I'm proud of them. They're disappointed. I'm disappointed, but said thank you to the seniors and told the juniors and sophomores and freshmen that now they know, what it's going to be like to play for us and our culture and what the Mizzou stands for, and look forward to getting them back January 17th, ready to roll.
Eli, I was going to touch on the schedule. I know you can't have any team activities through the 2nd, but is there kind of a plan going forward what the next stage is?
Yeah, the next stage for us is we'll conduct testing again tomorrow and Tuesday with everybody to try and find out what the exposure is and where we can stop it. We've began contact tracing and trying to isolate any individuals that have come in contact. But there will be no activities here until the 2nd. And then once we get the isolation and the testing and all that situated, then we'll be making arrangements for guys to be able to go home until the start of next semester.
Eli Mitchell 40 from Power Mizzou. I know, you're working with several parties, not just, the Iowa and the Big Ten and the SEC, but also the bowl game. But was there any chance this game could have been, postponed and tried to be played at a later date?
I wasn't involved in any of those discussions.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that. In talking to Scott Ramsey, the bowl director, they had explored other options, but with the Titans schedule that they had to cancel. Basically, they couldn't move it to another date.
Eric Blum, Columbia Daily Tribune. Eli, I know you said this is an unprecedented season. Is the feeling now for you and your team, do you think some combination of relief, or is it disappointment you couldn't play in a bowl game? You said it was kind of a celebration of getting to this point in the season. I'm just curious where kind of the heartbeat of the locker room is at this moment.
Yeah, there was definitely disappointment. We worked really hard. Obviously, this team wasn't allowed to go to a bowl game last year, and so for us to qualify for a bowl game to earn, there's some other teams that were given. We earned a bowl trip, and for us to earn it and then not be able to fulfill that, I think was disappointing. But I tried to refocus our team on what we have accomplished this year, what we did do, beating a ranked team at home, but beating the defending national champions and winning 5 games, I think is a heck of a start for us moving forward, and something that we're going to be anxiously awaiting to build on as soon as we get these guys back on January 17th.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff and everyone who helps make this happen. That's Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Todd Feedback, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Souichi Terada for stopping by and talking Mizzou. Links to his stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we have another deal for you, especially for those who want a deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? I know I do. Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkirkhoff@kcstar.com. I'll get you to the right place. So, whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode.